Okay, the whole Oval Office meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Carney was a heck of a roller coaster, but surely this was one of the most dramatic loops.
I think he's a great prime minister. I mean, he could represent me anytime. I will tell you, I'm not saying that because he's here. No, he is a very strong, very good leader. He's a nice man, but he could be nasty. He could be very nasty, maybe as nasty as anybody.
How?
I think Canada, let me put it this way, I can tell you this because I deal with lots of leaders all over the world. He is a world-class leader. He's a man that knows what he wants, and I'm not surprised to see that he won the election and won it substantially, and I would think he's more popular now. He's a good man. He does a great job, and he's a tough negotiator.
So then what's holding things up? If he's a great man and you want to do a deal with Canada, why aren't you?
Because I want to be a great man, too.
Is getting a compliment from Donald Trump a great thing?
Well, the president did say Carney could also be very nasty. Do the two things cancel each other out?
I mean, he's a guy who says a lot of things of all shapes and sizes. Some great and some, well, not so much.
I am Catherine Cullen, host of CBC's The House.
I'm Daniel Thibeault, Radio-Canada's Ottawa Bureau Chief and host of our political TV show, Les Coulisses du Pouvoir.
And I'm Jason Markusoff, producer and writer in Calgary.
And together, we are House Party, a weekly podcast diving into the big burning questions driving the political conversation. This week, we're asking, was the Trump-Carney meeting a win, a waste, or a wash? Okay, so it's a bit like win, lose, or draw. We're leaning into the alliteration here. What are we calling this, guys? Waste, wash, win? Jason?
Wash for now, probably. But I think with all Trump outcomes, ask me in a few days or maybe a year what's going to happen, because, there was some expectation raised by some of the Carney people that there was going to be some relief coming out of this on steel and aluminum potentially. Trump said in that Oval Office meeting that I think you're going to come out happy. Dominic LeBlanc, the minister, came out on the rooftop of the Canadian Embassy and said, we're going to keep talking next couple nights.
He did say he was happier today than he was yesterday when he showed up.
Even this morning.
So, there's a certain level of happiness that moved. The needle moved a little bit.
My happiness varies throughout the day, but it's mostly contingent on how much coffee I've had. We should, though, just timestamp this and tell everybody we are recording this 5 o'clock Eastern. So Dominic LeBlanc wrapped up his news conference on the roof, as Jason said, of the Canadian Embassy just a few minutes ago. It also means, though, like in the ... to be continued here, that there's conversations that are still supposed to be happening between LeBlanc and some of his American counterparts. Maybe they're happening tonight. Maybe they're happening Wednesday morning. We don't know how long this is going to go. Dan, does that leave you with what then? Wash, waste, where are we at?
You know what? In a normal world, I'd say it's a bit of a wash, borderline waste. Like there's nothing, right? He comes back, as of now, he comes back from Washington with nothing to show for. But in Donald Trump's world, the mere fact that he walked into the Oval Office and was not insulted and was not taken for a nasty ride or things went relatively well. And so that in itself is a bit of a win, right? And the compliment we heard earlier allows him to come back and say, see, the president respects me and we have this great relationship and we keep talking. And this is a good sign because if we didn't get along, we wouldn't be talking and there would be no chance of us getting anywhere anytime. And so somehow it's not a huge win. It's maybe a bit of a tiny win for Carney, but I still see it as a bit of a victory for him.
I want to dig deeper into the relationship in a second. And Jason, I'd love to hear more about what you think in terms of what we learned about this relationship between these two men. But what if we zoom out for a minute? I mean, I guess on this question about what this is, we don't know. We know from Dominic LeBlanc that the conversation going forward now is about steel, aluminum, and something to do with energy security. We don't quite know what that means. But based on what we heard going into this meeting, at least on steel and probably aluminum too, all we're really talking about is reducing the level of some sectoral tariffs. I mean, we are not talking about the win that Mark Carney pitched during the election campaign. Now, I know a lot of folks will say Donald Trump has turned out to be a much more dramatic president than folks realized at the time. But even if the Liberals achieve their ambitions here and they get some deals on the three sectors that they've mentioned, we know the Conservatives are going to be coming in hot and saying, okay, this isn't what you promised Canadians in the election. You said we were going to win this trade war. So as much as some sectoral tariffs being removed could be significant for the Canadian economy, it's certainly not the end of the tariff fight. In fact, Donald Trump said in the Oval Office, even if when they renegotiate CUSMA, the trade agreement, there's still going to be tariffs.
There is something that he said in the Oval Office. Well, he said a lot of nice things about Carney, and Carney should feel very good about his relationship with him, especially compared to Trudeau. There was one thing that really struck me that he kept talking about there, that there's a natural conflict, that there's this tension between the U.S. and Canada in trade.
We have natural conflict. We also have mutual love. We have great love for each other. I love this. I love Canada and the people of Canada. And Mark feels the same way about here. The problem we have is that they want a car company and I want a car company, meaning the U.S. wants a car company. And they want steel and we want steel. And, so in other countries, they're very far away. And there's no problem. You can compete and you can do. We don't like to compete because we sort of hurt each other when we compete. And so we have a natural conflict.
It's been called by other prime ministers and presidents the greatest friendship, the greatest trading relationship in the world. But when there's dollars flowing and goods flowing and services flowing south and north of the border, Trump sees it in win-loss terms. He sees it as conflict. You have to win. If you're not selling more products than you're buying, you are losing. And that's really informed his entire world trade view. And this term, more than in the past, he's really enacted on that. So I don't know if any prime minister, any leader could have won against somebody with that much of a mindset and that much of a mindset to withstand businesses and economic hurt to his own country, to let his own worldview win the day.
That's a very interesting way of describing the situation from Donald Trump's point of view. I think one of the issues that I see in there is that during the campaign, the electoral campaign, and early during the mandate, Mark Carney failed to read that situation properly, did not see that conflict the same way the U.S. saw it, figured that it would be something that could easily be fixed. I don't know if he understood Donald Trump as much as he said to the electorate that he understood it. And I think he also made everyone believe that he'd be able to get a deal that would mean no more tariffs. And as we're going and as we're seeing those negotiations unfold, it's becoming clearer and clearer to me that there's going to be a tariff. At the end of the day, there's going to be a tariff. It's going to be a lower tariff. It's going to be something different. But it doesn't sound like Donald Trump is willing to remove everything. And even today, he was asking, I can't remember the way he phrased it, but he basically said, no, there'll be a tariff. There'll be something. And so the mistake that Mark Carney did was that he made people believe that he'd be able to achieve this whole thing. And he obviously misread the room at that.
Well, I tend to think that Mark Carney believed, and I mean, we're getting tricky here when we're starting to get into the mind of politicians 6 months ago. So in a time machine and also mind reading.
Why not?
We're basically science fiction superheroes here. But I do think, I always come back to one of the phrases that he said over the course of winter, spring. He said, now we really understand their commitment to economic self-harm. You have to think Mark Carney, who is so deeply rooted in thinking about economies, thinking about how economies work, kind of didn't believe, as many observers didn't, that Donald Trump would go this far. But when we talk about the nature of the relationship between the two of them, there are a few things that I reflect on. One is really where that line is when Donald Trump is flattering Mark Carney and how Canadians see that. I don't think that most Canadians want Mark Carney to go in there and, verbally punch Donald Trump in the face. But does it become problematic, actually, when Donald Trump is so flattering of Mark Carney at a time when Canadians are feeling a little bit of discomfort? And in that same vein, I mean, I thought it was incredible. Really, I said at the beginning, roller coaster. And your heart kind of is in your throat watching this whole thing because you wonder what it means for the economic future of our country. And watching Mark Carney just sit there and say nothing as Donald Trump sort of went off on a tear at times. He was saying things about trans people. He talked about a black Texan Democratic Congresswoman, talked about her as somebody who has very low IQ.
Yeah.
Mark Carney inevitably is saying in his head, again, I don't know, I promise I can't read his thoughts, but you have to imagine he's thinking, these aren't my fights, right? These are not the fights I'm going to have. But there is, I think, a sort of discomfort as he sits there and listens to the president say things that might be untrue, nonsensical, go against his values.
But what else do you do, right? What else do you do? You're in the Oval Office. We've seen some world leaders showing up in there and trying to insert himself in the conversation just to be badly beaten up by the president. And it was funny because earlier today I was looking at that little game in the Oval Office, and I felt the roller coaster, and I was exchanging a bit of a live exchange with a couple of staffers. We're sitting in their office in Ottawa, minister staffers, and they were watching that. And you could see the tension in their texts, like, oh, phew, okay, that went well. All right, let's see. Oh, I don't think I want to go there. Oh, he called him nasty. Oh, yeah, but then he's a great man. Okay, so, and in both cases, I said, what do you think? They said, well, it's good. He gets out of there in a fairly good shape. And so, I don't know, what else are you supposed to do when you're sitting in there?
Jason?
This is a guy who can be vindictive in applying trade policy, foreign policy, compared to where Canada was with Justin Trudeau. Where he derided him as governor. He mocked him. He's called him nasty over the years. He called Freeland, the former trade minister, nasty in the past. And it seemed like he is a politician whose animus will drive his policy. I mean, there is a non-zero chance that in a week's time, there's a country tariffed because Donald Trump didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. Right? I mean, that's where the unpredictability of his and the importance of personal relationships is to him. So there will be those people who believed elbows up, who believed in giving an elbow to Donald Trump's kisser, who will be disappointed that he just sits there and listens to it. But for those whose business relationships and livelihoods rely on it, I would imagine a lot of them are pretty grateful that he didn't do something that would maybe feel good in the moment, but maybe harm them economically pretty seriously.
Last time, Carney had that line ready to go, right? Canada's not for sale. I remember that.
Just talk to the shareholders for the past 30 days.
That's it. Like the White House, Canada is not for sale. And so I thought it was so striking, like you talk about the roller coaster of this, the moment where Carney kind of gets into his speech and then Trump cuts in. I was screaming at my television watching this. Let's listen to that. Not me screaming, to be clear. Let's listen to what Trump had to say.
No, let's listen to you screaming as well.
Let's listen to what the Prime Minister had to say.
You kindly hosted me and some of my colleagues a few months ago, and I said at the time, you are a transformative president. And since then, the transformation in the economy, unprecedented commitments of NATO partners to defense spending, peace from India, Pakistan through to Azerbaijan, Armenia, disabling Iran as a force of terror. And now, and I'm running out of time, but this is in many respects the most important.
The merger of Canada and the United States.
That wasn't where I was going.
The merger of Canada and the United States. Even though Trump seems to respect Mark Carney as much as any world leader we've seen, he kind of can't help himself. And I will say, there were other things in there that were just classic Trump nonsense. He said at one point, all we do now is fairness. Okay.
But why I think that relationship matters so much and has its economic impact? I think back to what we were talking about a few weeks ago when Hoekstra came up and was talking about how we're really bothered how you guys are getting elbows up and you're not coming down, you're boycotting. I mean, Trump was even asked about tourism levels and why, what do you feel? How do you feel about tourism coming down? And he says, it's okay, I get it. I mean, Trump's relationship with Carney has lowered the temperature on so significantly that I don't think it can be understated.
Yeah, on that particular case, I was struck by the response because, I get it. It was a line that I was expecting a bit of a hard response from Trump, and he just said, I get it. Americans don't want to buy cars from Canada either. And so
I thought he was getting a little vindictive there, to be honest. I thought the question was like, well, Canadians don't want to come. And Trump was like, well, we don't want to buy your cars either. And then sort of reverted to a little bit more of the nice guy mode.
But didn't say, I'm going to make them pay for that. And it's going to be an issue. And they should come. And then at some point a little later said something like, most people like us. And we're going to find a way. I didn't feel... He was, and maybe I'm comparing too much to the relationship that he was entertaining with Justin Trudeau back in the day. And it was not the same level of friendliness, let's put it that way. I thought today was a very measured Donald Trump compared to what we've seen in the past, or what we could have seen in today's setting.
Okay, so that's the relationship, but there are a lot of questions about where this goes. Surprising amount of talk about the Golden Dome. What's going on with the future of free trade between the two countries? Let's talk about that right after this break.
All right, so Dominic LeBlanc said on the rooftop of the Canadian Embassy, steel, aluminum, energy, strengthening energy partnership. I'm guessing he's not talking about Hydro-Quebec sending more electricity down south. Jason, must be something on your side.
I don't think I had the only set of Alberta ears that perked up when he talked about energy, because steel and aluminum, we figured that was going to be the big talks, the Section 232 tariffs, so-called. Of course, energy is not tariffed right now, but Dominic LeBlanc was talking about wanting to deepen that partnership and contribute more to the energy security of the United States. That, to a lot of Alberta ears, is going to sound like more oil and more natural gas being shipped south. And, will they build another pipeline south? Is Keystone XL getting yet again back on the potential block to be built? I don't know. That seems new. I know that Danielle Smith, when she was down there directly talking to Trump at Mar-a-Lago, that was the one point she made to him. Would you like to buy more oil? And Trump, according to her, said yes to the premier. It's really interesting to hear that could be part of the deal to sweeten the... And the other good thing for Canada and for farmers could be that if that's the offset, if we get a small win on aluminum and steel tariffs, and in exchange we ship them more oil, that sounds pretty win-win-win to me, and means we don't have to lose potentially in another area. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
And then it becomes a win for Donald Trump, and he likes to show a win, right? So he can say, I got more oil out of it.
Can you imagine, Pierre Poilievre was up in question period today before this whole thing was truly, truly wrapped, sort of suggesting that Mark Carney was a sellout. I mean, those were the words he was using, that this didn't work out. And he's saying, Carney wants, a deeper economic relationship. There's more Canadian investment that's going to be going to the U.S. That's a sellout. Can you imagine Pierre Poilievre trying to square a world where Mark Carney ultimately ends up selling more oil to the United States? That said, though, the flip side of that coin is Mark Carney has said it's a new relationship with the U.S.
We need to diversify.
Well, they're not as reliable. So, is it in Canada's long-term interest to get deeper in? We're getting speculative because we don't know what the deal, if there is one, is. But that word security is really interesting to me because Mark Carney has talked about a deeper economic and security relationship. Dan, supply management, dairy also came up. So maybe some Albertans' ears perked up. How do you think Quebecers are feeling?
Yeah, I was listening to Question Period, and the Bloc certainly heard that chunk of the speech in the Oval Office. Basically, Donald Trump, it felt like Donald Trump was opening the negotiation on Kuzma by saying, farmers, think about the farmers. We're going to need to do something about the farmers. And that means opening up the supply-demand system in the eastern side of the country. And that means getting more access to farmers, U.S. farmers, to the Canadian market, which is something that the government and the Bloc and people in Quebec, and it's huge in Quebec, it's big, big, big. That's something that they don't want to see. And that's something that they adopted a bill to protect supply and demand not that long ago. So how do you square that circle? What does it mean? A couple of weeks ago, we heard about maybe adjusting the language so that the quotas that are in the hands of American producer could be used to sell directly to the public instead of selling to a pizza maker or a cheese maker here in the transforming market. So we'll see how that goes. But that certainly caught my attention. It caught the Quebec attention and the Bloc as well it'll be interesting.
And I
to
mean,
see.
Catherine, if you're a steel worker or auto worker in Ontario or their premier, you might be coming out of this thinking, what we get?
Well, and that I think is in part why you saw Doug Ford going into this saying, listen, if Carney doesn't come out with a deal, we got to fight.
We can't just keep rolling over to President Trump. As he strengthens his case, we seem to be weakening our case by continuously pulling off tariffs. I'd take a different approach. Try to get a deal if you can't. We got to hit him back hard and never stop hitting him back hard, because we can never take a backseat to anyone, especially President Trump.
I mean, so much of this is such like raw politics.
Oh, totally.
And that clip from Doug Ford, I think, sort of epitomizes that. It's fascinating. On the one hand, you have the premier saying, Carney's a smart guy. I know he's going to get it done. And then on the other hand, saying, we have to hit him and just not stop hitting him. You got to think right now, Doug Ford, who we haven't heard from at the time we're taping this, is going to give Mark Carney and the Canadian contingent a little bit more rope, particularly if the idea is that in the next few days, we don't know, weeks, we don't know, there could be some sort of meaningful deal to at least make things less bad. Or for steel and aluminum, maybe it's a quota system and it's not about tariffs. That remains to be seen.
Slightly better. And if you're Doug Ford, you're saying those words because you're hit on both sides, right? In Ontario, it's the cars, it's the car industry and the steel industry. If he gets a bit of a break on the steel industry, we don't know yet, but if something happens on that side, that might make him feel a little better. The car thing, if he was listening to the speech in the Oval Office today, I would have been worried if I was Doug Ford, because Trump didn't sound like a guy who wanted to find the middle ground on the car thing, right? He kept saying, we want to make our cars, we want to make our own cars, and we want to bring everything back on this side. That would mean a lot of lost jobs in Ontario if it goes that way.
But surely there's going to be a lot of steel being used to build this Golden Dome that apparently Canada is now part of, right, Catherine?
Yeah, that was what a little twist there. These references to the Golden Dome, and I mean, I do think again, Dominic LeBlanc, Minister for Canada-U.S. Trade. David Cochrane's line is what? Minister for Janitorial Services. He's in charge of cleaning up every mess this government has to deal with. Was asked about this, like, so did we sign up for the Golden Dome? And a sort of a classic LeBlanc answer where he said, sign up. You're suggesting there's some sort of contract. We're not there yet. I think this is a fascinating issue because the Golden Dome, I mean, in some ways, is it not just the Trumpiest, right? It is this massive idea that seemed to come out of nowhere, great expense, very flashy. And so I think it surprised people when earlier on in the conversation, you heard the Canadians saying like, well, yeah, we're having conversations about that. There's clearly to me some line in here when Mark Carney talks about a new economic and security relationship with the United States. You know, he's put a lot of Canadian money in this over-the-horizon radar that Canada is buying from Australia, right, to detect things coming our way. An interview that's just dropped between Mark Carney and The Economist, the interviewer says, well, it's great that you can spot the things, but you can't shoot them down. And he said, well, you know, that's where we need to work in partnership. So I think there are a lot of questions about what Trump can actually do here and exactly how much Canada is buying in. But it's clear Canada is not dismissing this out of hand. There's some sort of arrangement.
It's not the first time. It's not the first time we have a partnership with the U.S. to surveil the northern side of the continent. I think the Golden Dome is like an idea that looks like an idea that's coming out of Donald Trump's head. We'll see what it becomes. It's one of those things where it doesn't feel to me like it cost anything to Canada right now to say, yeah, I'm interested. It's legitimately, it's about protecting our airspace. And so why not? Will it be the Golden Dome? By the time we get to something in the ground and start working on it, it might be called the Golden Dome, might be called something else, might be a different thing, might be costing less, more. I think right now we're looking into a huge idea. And it's just so easy to say, Yeah, sure.
let's keep talking about it.
Let's keep talking.
I think it's worth rooting this conversation about the Golden Dome into where the idea comes from, where the name comes from. Coming from the Iron Dome that Israel has, that basically can shoot down, and we've seen it in action, tragically quite a bit over the last couple years. This, apparatus, this massive anti-missile defense system that Israel has to shoot down basically anything that comes into its airspace. And Trump wanted to do the exact same thing somehow. And of course, Trump being Trump wants to call it the Golden Dome.
It's golden.
Just look at his Oval Office, how he decorates. That's his favorite color, I guess. If it's actually that, I mean, it's unfeasible in any economic sense to do exactly that for the entire continental U.S. or Canada and U.S. If what they're actually envisioning after the bluster is something more like the anti-ballistic missiles Star Wars kind of system that we talked about, going back to what the Reagan days or further back, then maybe a Carney is on track.
But surely the biggest surprising development out of all of this was Donald Trump talking about hockey. So, I don't watch a lot of hockey, but I know. And I just thought, oh my God, is this sports metaphor thing that it's taken over our politics going to keep going? Although I will say, I liked a little Blue Jays reference in there. I'm not a big sports fan.
We're coming with the World Series. That was Carney's comeback. That was good.
This is my sports. This watching things like this Oval Office visit. I know there are very serious real world implications. This is as exciting for me as the World Series is for other folks. But I still thought, I didn't mind a little CanCon in there.
It wouldn't be a real good political speech meeting / conference if there was not one little sports reference in there.
I will say,
and we're recording this before the inevitable victory over the Yankees. Let's timestamp. So tension. Speaking of tension and conflict in the air.
I was going to say, we're going to go from the ridiculous to the sublime, or maybe the saccharine. Doing this show with you guys has been my World Series. Aww. No,
it's been a lot of fun.
Been a lot of fun.
As Trump also said, there's much love here.
Yes, it's the greatest podcast.
We should just tell folks who may not have heard. For now, this is the last episode of House Party, at least for the time being.
Yeah.
We finished our sort of short run looking at the new parliament, but we are hoping to pop back up from time to time in your podcast feed when there is a big burning political question to tackle. The best way to stay in the loop is, of course, for people to follow this podcast feed. Before we get to all the good reasons to do that and the great stuff we're going to be up to in the meantime, I just want to say thank you to you guys for being such awesome party guests.
Thank you. Thank you to you both. That was so awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
So much. It's always great, guys, to chat with you.
Yeah. But for now, if folks are following the podcast feed, you can get my other show, The House, every Saturday morning. I am actually, in just a few hours' time, off to Montreal to find out about Mark Carney's challenge to both harness the power of AI and protect Canadians from the dangers.
I was in Montreal yesterday. I'm in Montreal again tomorrow. We're doing something this week on the mayoral race in Quebec, the municipal election. We actually sat down with two female mayor, one who's running again, one who decided not to run, the challenges of being a woman in politics, especially on the municipal level. That was a fascinating conversation. We're just putting it together. We'll show you the end result on Sunday morning. We have
a Calgary mayoral election too, and elections across Alberta on the local level, so that'll be interesting. And then, of course, there's this whole big thing we haven't gone into yet, but the pipeline that Danielle Smith wants to build, not to Trump's America, but to David Eby's west coast of Canada, which will be ever interesting. And Alberta politics, as I've said for the last 10 years running, is never boring.
Okay, so you can catch our stuff across CBC Radio, television, and online. Thank you again to my wonderful co-hosts, Jason Markusoff and Daniel Thibeault, and the wonderful production team, Emma Godmere, Jennifer Chevalier. I am Catherine Cullen. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you at the next party.